Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. So the Custodian preview happened on the Warhammer TV this afternoon, and it was supposed to be with Andy Clark, but Phil Kelly stepped in since Andy Clark was struck down by Nurgle. I presume that means he had the flu. So he went through, and this is basically the notes I took from that. This is all for the lore. There's no rules or anything like that in this. I'm probably going to be doing a separate video for the rules, which they talked about, but this video is just solely the lore and all the questions people asking in chat and stuff like that. So let's jump in and let's get started. So Phil Kelly opened up just explaining what a Custodian guard is. A lot of people still don't know what Custodians are, so he just went briefly over what they are. So he explained that they're the guardians of the Emperor. They've been around way before the Great Crusade ever took place. They've always been following the Emperor, been guarding with him and stuff like that. He went over like the Custodian is the highest status a warrior can hope to achieve. They are incredibly capable warriors, and each Custodian is like a superhero character. He went on saying the Custodians, it's actually kind of an ironic twist, because they've been guarding the Emperor for the past 10,000 years. They've been static. They've not been involved in the 41st millennium. They haven't been involved in anything really from the Horus Heresy. It's ironic because as the Imperium has been getting in a far worse state, they basically had these weapons of destruction which could have helped turn the balance in certain areas, but they've just been stagnant, stuck on Terra, guarding the Emperor for 10,000 years and just slowly watching the Imperium decay, more or less. The Custodian Guard are split into something called Shield Host. Now, what a Shield Host is, it's basically different organizations within the Custodian Guard, much like battle companies for the Space Marines, but it's just the Custodian Guard twist on them. So these are some of the Shield Hosts which were previewed on the actual stream. So we had the Shuttle Keepers. Their color scheme is dark, almost obsidian, while still keeping the gold and red. These guys are trusted in guarding the darkest secrets, the darkest vaults of Terra. He was explaining that Terra, the Imperial Palace itself is, it takes up like the full Himalayas, and there's multiple levels to it, and there's all kind of stuff within there, and these are the guys who are entrusted to keeping that kind of stuff safe. So that is the Shadow Keepers. Now the next one is the Aquilian Shield. Now these chaps are gold with a purple sash. These chaps are the guardians of Terra itself. They do not leave Terra. They are the ones who will stand vigilant on Terra, while the rest of the Custodians are now leaving Terra and fighting. The Aquilian Shield host will not leave Terra. We have the Dread Host, and it's said that these are the instruments of the Emperor's wrath. Their color scheme, it appears to be gold with black shoulder pads. I couldn't really make it out on the stream. We have the Solar Watch. These are the ones who are in ivory white. They have that white, really, really nice white color scheme. And then we have the Sirius Imperatus. I'm sure that's what he said. Again, with the stream and the quality, it was kind of hard to make out what he was saying. And it looked like these were gold and red, and they had a white sash on their body. He went into more detail, said they usually have regal and striking colour schemes, stuff which is very vivid and rich. You probably wouldn't see them in browns, greens, never in like stuff like camouflage and stuff like that. Their armour is made from oronite. It's the best stuff the Imperium can make. It's like Space Marine Terminator power armour, but it's basically 150% more excellent. Those were his actual words. It's 150% more excellent. All their armor, all their weapons are custom made. Nothing is made in batch. Every piece of equipment which is given to a Custodian is made for that Custodian. Everything is master crafted. It's made for them personally, so it's just a beautiful, beautiful set of armor and weapons which each Custodian have. They're personally given to that warrior to suit that warrior's personality, that warrior's height, balance, everything like that. Everything is mastercrafted to that certain warrior. He went into a bit of detail about how custodians fight. They fight like individuals. Unlike Space Marines, which fight in packs, the custodians fight like lions, where the Space Marines fight like wolves, like a pack of wolves. He says each custodian is an army of one, so they are basically just out there and just blitzing everyone on their own. But this could be a huge disadvantage, say, when you come across a more of an organized force. Say you came across a traitor legion which is working in multiple groups and stuff like that. This can really become a disadvantage then for a custodian. He went into detail on how an actual custodian is recruited into the Custodian Guard. Now this is very, very interesting. He said there the custodians are recruited from infancy. Terra is a huge labyrinth, a dystopian world, a world covered in metal or, gunned up emplacements, just like this labyrinth of just a maze of metal. And on Terra you have these noble families, these aristocrats who offer up their infant children to become custodians. Much like a sacrifice, they give their children to the custodians to hopefully become a custodian. So all these families who offer up their children as sacrifices hope their children make it, and if they do make it, then that person then takes on a new name. Now, names for custodians are taken from myths and legends of Terra, sometimes past heroes from the Great Crusade and sometimes it's just spiritual names. The families will never find out if their child makes it. There was kind of a funny thing. He said that all these families then go around with like bragging rights to say that one of their offspring made it into the Custodian Guard, because basically no one tells them that their kid failed, so they just go around presuming that their child is now basically a Custodian Guard guarding the Emperor. Back before the Horus Heresy happened, when the Emperor still walked among everyone, the Custodian Guards were not just seen as his bodyguards to the Emperor, they were actually seen as his companions. People he debated philosophy with, art, language, and stuff like that. They were allowed to enter his sanctums, his throne room. He had a very personal relationship with the actual Custodes. They had to be experts in every field of human enterprise, not just fighting and killing. So culture, history, geography, all that kind of stuff. They had to be the peak of humanity in all those different areas. They're able to hold their own as ambassadors, statesmen, diplomats, leaders. They are the peak of humanity. But the tragic thing about the Custodes is that they failed in their ultimate task, and that was protecting the Emperor of Mankind. When the Emperor teleported onto the Vengeful Spirit, he was aided by some of his Custodian Guard, but when he confronted Horus, who was fully powered by chaos at this point, Phil said they were just completely out of their league. They just couldn't match Horus's power, and they just couldn't protect the Emperor when Horus brought him down. And from that day now, since the Emperor has been entombed onto the Golden Throne, they have been racked with guilt. It just sent a shockwave throughout the full Custodian Order, which they're still suffering to this day. They spent the time since that in grief, wearing black shrouds of mourning. This is one of the reasons why they remain so close to Terra all these years, is because that they feel they let the Emperor down, and they're still racked with that guilt. They basically lock themselves away because of the guilt of them letting down the Emperor. They've just stood immobile, waiting to really just be unleashed and to try and get some vengeance back for what has happened to the Emperor. And they've returned now to the storyline, and they have been unleashed, all really because of Rebuti Gilman's return. Rebuti entered the throne room and he spoke to the Emperor. Phil said we'll probably never know what was said between them two, but Rebuti came out with a plan to immobilize the Custodes, the Sisters of Silence, all the new Primaris Marines, to get everything moving forward and start taking back the galaxy in the Emperor's name. Rebuti got together with Trajan Valoris, and they made some new treaties/laws which allowed the Custodes to leave Terra, so they are no longer on the defensive, they are on the offensive. The main task of the Custodes is to find the enemies which pose the biggest threat to Terra and the Golden Throne itself, then venture out and stop them before they start getting a lot of traction behind them, and they just become into like a big snowball effect. They're out to cut the head off the beast, so it stops right there. This is why you probably won't see like huge armies of Custodes taking on the battlefield. They're more or less like these elite troops that are sent in to deal with the biggest threats to Terra and the Golden Throne itself. The Custodians, now that they've been let off the leash, so to say, they have a new lease of life. They're finally able to fight and kill the enemies of the Emperor. They're finally able to atone for their sins, more or less. We got some really nice lore about Trajan Valoris. He's the only person to successfully complete the Blood Games twice. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Blood Games are an exercise practiced by the Adeptus Custodes through which members of the Custodes act as enemy combatants and attempt to penetrate the security of the Imperial Palace on Terra. Now, Trajan Valoris has completed this twice, so he seems to be a master at this. They did mention that the Custodes deal with a lot of stuff on Terra, stuff like Gene Stealer uprisings. They did mention that there was some in the south, some in the north, which the Custodians dealt with. Cultists tend to pop up now and then with the mass amount of people heading to Terra for pilgrimage and stuff like that. You always get, you know, maybe a couple of cultists bundled in with them and they get through. So it's up to the Custodians to go out, find these people and hunt them down basically and kill them. Custodians have something called the Magnificata Ultima, which is basically a law/rank from the Emperor himself, which allows them to pull rank on anyone else. They don't abuse this. It's not like some Inquisitors who would use this rank in a devious way for their own agenda. Custodians won't do that. They are super focused. They don't have their own agenda. They're not selfish. Their entire life's work is to look after the Imperium and the protection of the Emperor of Mankind. Phil Kelly did say that if a chapter master and a Custodian did cross paths, then they would probably get into a little debate about leadership and stuff like that. But he did say that the chapter master will probably come round to see that the Custodian will basically know what they're talking about, because they've been alive for so long and they have a ton of experience. On some levels, the Custodians were more favoured than the Primarchs themselves. History has told us that half the Primarchs fell. He said that you want someone incorruptible to stand over you, and since half the Primarchs fell and a Custodian has never fell, since the heresy, the Custodians no longer trust the Astartes fully. They don't let any Astartes within spear's length. They always keep an Astartes at spear's length. Even after thousands of years of loyalty from some of these chapters, they still cannot forgive the Horus Heresy and the events that led to the Emperor's demise. So they always keep these Astartes at spear length. They will not let them closer than a spear's length because they just do not trust them since the Horus Heresy. Custodians do not age. They're basically immortal. He said that the Emperor was just a master at gene crafting. He was just supernatural at it, so they stay alive until they're slain in battle. He did say that they do, over time, they may slow down a little bit over the thousands of years. Some are over 1,000 years old, some are several thousand years old. Their reaction speed may have slowed over that period. When this does happen, and well, if it does happen, they recognize this within themselves and they revoke their position as a custodian. They revoke it themselves as a custodian. The custodians who revoke their position, they give up their arms and their armor to the Hall of Armament, and then that custodian will shroud himself in black robes, and then he will venture out into the Imperium as a spy. He basically gets a title called Eyes of the Emperor, and he becomes like a custodian spy. He still has contact with Terra and the custodians in Terra, and then he sends back reports of, you know, rising warlords, maybe dangers to Terra or the throne itself, so the custodians can then act on this, thanks to these custodians who have ventured out of the palace, who are on Terra, maybe in the galaxy itself, and are reporting some of the dangers which may be heading their way. Valdor was mentioned, and the cool thing about Valdor is that there's no records of his death. So it's possible that Valdor may still be alive. I have no idea where he could have gone to. I may do a separate video on that altogether because it's just too awesome not to talk about. So Valdor, There's no record of his death. He still may be alive somewhere in the Imperium. Custodians still escort vital members of the Imperium, just like the old days, even more so now, since the Great Rift has happened and there's so many dangers. Chaos is spewing across the galaxy, the Xenos threats and everything like that. So they're still on duty for guarding vital members of the Imperium. They still have the technology to make Custodians, but they may not be as good as the ones the Emperor could make, since he was the gene craft father, and of course stuff gets lost over thousands of years, but you can still make Custodians. There are no Custodian Psychers. The Emperor made Custodians not to be Psychers. Psychers cannot really be trusted. They do have a very powerful soul, a powerful soul that can hold back some psychic powers. They don't really trust Psychers all that much, especially so since the Horus Heresy. The height of a Custodian is between 8 foot and 9.5 foot, just depending on a certain Custodian. They are much taller than a Space Marine. In this certain case, Rabuti Guilliman does outrank the Custodians for the simple fact that Rabuti Guilliman is a genius. He is working with Trajan Valoris, but they do follow Rabuti's lead because he's just a master at everything he does. Everything from battle to battle strategy, they completely trust him 100%. They did mention if someone like Russ or Khan would return, and these are the kind of characters who don't really have that kind of strategy about them. They just headstrong into battle. They wouldn't really trust their leadership or basically follow their orders. The Tau have almost certainly witnessed the Custodes, but he did say that they probably don't even know who they are really. They just think that they're just a shiny bodyguard, but he did say that the Tau have almost certainly witnessed the Custodes. Custodians have really, really long names over the time of their lives, or the new deeds they do, they add new names to them. They end up scribing these names within their armor itself. These names can be hundreds of words long. This kind of helps stops demon sorcerers trying to get power over them, because in a way they can never really learn their true name, since they have names which can be, 100 words long and stuff like that. So it's really a kind of a counter effective to sorcery, trying to control Custodians in that kind of way. Phil went on to discuss this really, really cool thing. Back in the old days when the Emperor and the Custodes were together, they went against a huge entire Orc war on their own. And they didn't win by killing the war boss. They won by completely wiping out the entire Orc force. Every Orc died. There was just a planet full of just dead Orcs, and on that day 3 Custodians fell, and it was considered a huge loss. To honor them, the Emperor himself inscribed their names within his own armor. Alright chaps, that is me done for another video. All my notes have come to an end, sadly. I really just could speak about these chaps all day long. I absolutely love Custodians. I cannot wait to get the codex and just go through the lore myself, and hopefully do more of these videos and give you more information. If you are a subscriber to the Warhammer TV over on Twitch, the link is in the description. You can go and watch this full lore video and just listen to Phil talk about this himself. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you've appreciated the information. Hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Are you still in hype mode for the Custodians? I know I am. I cannot wait. Pre-orders go up this Saturday, so it should be glorious. Thank you for watching. Hope you've enjoyed the video. I shall see you all very soon. See you now chaps, and bye bye.